The first call wasn't to me. It was to my sister, Chloe, the family's golden child who wore her suspiciously easy success like a second skin. Her private banker was stammering, his professional calm shattered. "It's all gone, Chloe," he'd said, his voice tinny with panic. "A federal seizure. A Section 311 action. This is Treasury level." While her world was imploding in a lavish walk-in closet, I was in my quiet apartment, looking out at the city lights. My own phone was pressed to my ear, my voice steady. "Yes, Director," I confirmed. The seizure warrants were executed at 0800. All assets linked to Project Nightingale are now secure. Just 24 hours earlier, I was standing in the heart of that very project, a stunning mansion rented for Chloe's 30th birthday. The air was thick with champagne and the sound of fake laughter. Presiding over it all was my mother, a woman who believed enabling her favorite daughter was the highest form of love. She watched Chloe, draped in a designer dress that cost more than my car, with a look of pure adoration. It was a look I hadn't seen directed at me since, well, ever. My role, as always, was to be a silent, unremarkable satellite to their brilliant son. A well-meaning guest made the mistake of asking me what I did. I gave my standard, pre-approved answer, the one that kept me safely in my box. "I'm a data analyst for a government contractor," I said, my voice intentionally flat. "Mostly spreadsheets." Chloe overheard, of course, and let out a theatrical laugh. "She means she's a professional paper pusher." She announced to the room, "My sister, Annie the accountant, making sure the government's paper clips are all counted." The small crowd chuckled, and I felt that familiar cold weight settle in my stomach. The internal ledger tallying another casual cruelty. The night curdled when Chloe flaunted her fiancé's latest gift, an incredibly rare timepiece. As she held it up, the light catching its intricate face, my breath caught. I didn't see a watch, I saw Exhibit A from a classified intelligence brief I had co-authored. I saw the linchpin of a money laundering scheme. "That's a beautiful piece," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Be careful with it. Things like that have a way of being tracked." I wasn't being cruel. It was a warning, a final, foolish attempt to reach the sister I once knew. She saw it as a declaration of war. Her face, moments ago beaming with pride, twisted into a mask of pure fury. "How dare you?" she shrieked, the sound silencing the nearby conversations. "You're just jealous you'll never have anything this nice." She shoved me, hard. I stumbled but didn't react, my mind already shifting from family function to professional assessment. My silence enraged her further. She lunged, grabbed a handful of my hair and physically dragged me toward the front door as my mother watched, her expression completely, utterly blank. "Get out of my house!" Chloe screamed. "You're ruining my party." As my scalp burned and my mother just stared, I wasn't just a humiliated sister. I was a federal investigator who had just been assaulted by a key associate of a primary target. Chloe had no idea she hadn't just thrown me out of her party, she had just given me cause to activate the protocol. To understand the collapse that was coming, you have to understand the two lives I was living. The persona my family knew as Annie the accountant was a carefully constructed fiction, a gray camouflage I wore to survive in a world that only saw color on my sister. This version of me was quiet, unassuming, and content with a life measured in spreadsheets and sensible shoes. She was a convenient story they told themselves, a bland backdrop that made my sister Chloe's life seem all the more dazzling. The other me, the real me, existed in silence and secrecy, in rooms with no windows and conversations that could shift global markets. They never met. Until the day of the party, I had made sure of it. I remember a family dinner about a year ago, the kind of mandatory gathering that felt more like a parole hearing. My father popped a bottle of champagne, the expensive kind, because Chloe had an announcement. She'd been made VP of Acquisitions at her fiancé's mysterious investment firm. The title was meaningless, a puff of corporate smoke, but my parents reacted as if she'd been nominated for a Nobel Prize. My mother, her eyes gleaming, toasted to a daughter who knows how to get what she wants. The internal ledger in my mind flipped back through years of my own achievements, debate trophies, scholarships, academic honors, all met with a polite, "Oh, that's nice, dear." Later that evening, when the celebratory tide had ebbed slightly, I tried to share a piece of my own life. I pulled the heavy medallion from my bag, its polished bronze cool against my palm. "I received something at work," I began, my voice feeling small in the suddenly quiet room. "It's the Treasury Department's Meritorious Service Award. For my team's work in dismantling an international smuggling ring." I thought of the months of sleepless nights, the complex data trails, the very real danger we had navigated. I thought of the people whose lives were better because of that work. It was the most significant achievement of my professional life. My mother took the award, her fingers brushing against it as if it were a curious coaster. She gave me a gentle, pitying smile. "Oh, that's nice, dear," she said, the exact same words as always, before placing the medal on the table with a soft thud. Her eyes immediately drifted to Chloe's wrist. "Did you see the diamond bracelet Chloe's fiancé bought her?" she asked, her voice alight with genuine excitement once more. And just like that, my reality, a world of consequence and duty, was dismissed for a piece of glitter. The award for saving lives was less interesting than the bauble bought with laundered money. This was the foundation of the Annie the accountant myth. My quietness wasn't seen as focus. It was a lack of personality. My refusal to indulge in flashy, debt-fueled consumerism wasn't prudence. It was proof of my failure. It was easier for them to believe I was a boring paper pusher because the alternative, that I was living a life far more complex and important than theirs, was unthinkable. "You should be more like Chloe," my mother once advised me, her tone gentle and utterly serious. "She knows how to get what she wants out of life." What she meant was that Chloe was loud, demanding, and visible. I was none of those things. But my other life, the real one, was built on silence. It existed in places like the skiff, the sensitive compartmented information facility, a sterile, windowless room deep in a federal building. The only sound was the hum of servers and the quiet clicking of keyboards. Here, there were no family dynamics, only facts. Here, I wasn't Annie. I was investigator Hayes. And here, I was briefing the one man who saw me for exactly who I was, Director Evans, a no-nonsense, sharp-as-a-tack senior official who had personally recruited me from grad school. He didn't care about flashy bracelets, he cared about results. I stood before a massive smartboard, its screen glowing with a complex web of transactions that looked like a spider's dream. The wire transfers from the Cayman Shell, Nightingale Holdings, matched the exact amounts used for the real estate and luxury asset purchases, I explained, pointing to a series of highlighted figures. "It's a classic trade-based money laundering scheme. The fiancé is the UBO, the ultimate beneficial owner." My voice was confident here, my language precise. This was my native tongue, the language of facts and consequences, a language my family would never understand. Director Evans listened, his eyes narrowed in concentration, absorbing every detail. He walked closer to the board, his gaze fixed on a photo of my sister and her fiancé at a polo match, laughing, champagne in hand. "So, the girlfriend," he said, his voice low and serious. "The sister. She's the primary vehicle for liquidating the funds into hard assets?" I met his gaze, the full weight of the situation hanging between us. The two worlds were finally colliding on this screen. "Yes, sir," I confirmed, my own voice betraying no emotion. "She's either complicit or a willing fool." A long silence filled the room. Then, I pointed to the name of the shell company. "Given the circumstances," I said, "we've codenamed the investigation Project Nightingale, after their holding company. For years, I kept my two worlds separate to protect my family from the dangerous truths I uncovered. After that party, I realized I wasn't protecting them. I was enabling them. They only respected the appearance of power. It was time to show them what actual authority looked like. Back in the sterile quiet of my apartment, the only sound was my own breathing. My scalp throbbed where Chloe's fingers had clenched, a dull, burning ache. There were no tears. I think I had run out of those years ago. Instead, there was deep, cold clarity. I went to the bathroom, angled my phone, and methodically took photos of the angry red marks on my skin and the faint scratches along my face. This wasn't for a police report. That would have been her world, her rules. This was for an official case file. My goal had shifted from enduring the injustice to ending it. The target wasn't just my sister anymore. It was the entire rotten enterprise she had so gleefully embraced. I sat down at my desk and opened the encrypted government-issued laptop, its gray metal cool beneath my fingertips. My hands were steady as I began to write, translating the raw, humiliating violence into the cold, precise language of federal law. I drafted an official memorandum to Director Evans, the words flowing with an unnerving ease. The subject line was stark: request for immediate sanctions and seizure action. Project Nightingale. Exigent circumstances. I detailed my findings, but then I added a new critical section: behavioral indicators and witness intimidation. I described the assault not as a family squabble, but as an unprovoked physical attack by a key associate against a federal officer. This wasn't about my hurt feelings. It was about demonstrating that the targets were volatile, unpredictable, and an immediate flight risk. Then I took the secure phone. It wasn't a call for comfort or validation. It was an activation. I dialed the direct line to Director Evans, my heart a steady, rhythmic drum. "Director, it's Investigator Hayes," I said when he answered. "I have an urgent update on Nightingale." He was all business. "Go ahead." I took a breath. The associate, my sister, has become physically violent. It's in the memo I just sent, along with supporting evidence. Her behavior indicates the subjects are unstable. I am formally recommending we execute the Section 311 designation and seize all known assets immediately. There was a weighty pause on the other end of the line. Director Evans knew my family situation, and he understood the gravity of what I was doing. "You are invoking exigent circumstances based on a direct threat?" he asked, his voice low and serious. There was no hesitation in my reply. "Yes, sir," I said. "She has demonstrated a capacity for violence to silence perceived threats. The integrity of the operation is at risk." Another brief pause, then resolution. "Understood," he said. "The order will be signed within the hour. Good work, Hayes. Stay safe." I hung up the phone, a strange calm settling over me. There was no triumph, only the quiet hum of a massive, powerful machine shuddering to life. The call took less than 2 minutes. The system was now in motion. Chloe thought she had thrown me out of her life. She had no idea she had just personally authorized the warrant that would erase it. I wasn't there to see it, of course. My work was already done, but I had read enough witness statements and surveillance reports to picture the scene perfectly. The morning after the party found my sister Chloe and my mother exactly where I knew they would be, lounging by the pool of the opulent mansion, sipping mimosas. I imagine they were laughing, replaying my melodramatic exit, congratulating themselves on successfully ejecting the gray little storm cloud from their perfect blue sky. Chloe was probably scrolling through photos from her party, basking in the glow of her social triumph, completely oblivious to the gears of a system she didn't even know existed grinding into motion. The first tremor was small, almost unnoticeable. A text message from her fiancé, not with the usual string of heart emojis, but 2 stark words: "Call me." "Urgent?" Chloe likely rolled her eyes, annoyed at the interruption. The real crack in her perfect world appeared a few moments later, when she tried to buy some ridiculously expensive digital bauble on her tablet. A small red notification popped up. Transaction declined. She would have frowned, tapped the screen again, assuming it was a glitch. It was always a glitch for Chloe, never a consequence. When my mother tried to order something from her own account and received the same cold message, annoyance would have started to curdle into a faint, unfamiliar feeling of unease. Then came the arrival. There was no sound of sirens, no dramatic commotion, just a silent, coordinated procession of black government sedans pulling into the long, curved driveway. Men and women in crisp, professional suits emerged, their movements economical and purposeful. They wore jackets with the U.S. Treasury's insignia subtly embroidered on the chest, a symbol of a power far more absolute than Chloe's fleeting wealth. The private security guard, a mountain of a man hired for intimidation, took one look at the lead agent and the thick document in his hand and simply stepped aside. He understood a hierarchy Chloe never could. The lead agent, a calm and imposing man I knew as Special Agent Carr, approached the patio. I had specifically requested him for this part of the operation. His blood pressure was legendarily stable. He didn't raise his voice or show a flicker of emotion as he stopped before them. "Chloe?" he asked, his tone flat and professional. "I'm Special Agent Carr. We have a federal seizure warrant for this property and all assets contained within—" The words, delivered so plainly, seemed to hang in the humid morning air, utterly alien in this world of yes-men and catered luxury. For a moment, there was just stunned silence. Then came the explosion. Chloe shot to her feet, her face a mask of apoplectic rage. This was her home turf, her kingdom, and she was its queen. "This is my house," she shrieked, her voice echoing across the manicured lawn. "My fiancé bought this for me. You can't just take my things." It was the tantrum of a child who had never been told no, the raw, furious display of an authority she believed was absolute. She was used to screaming and getting her way. This time she was screaming at a steel wall of facts. Special Agent Carr didn't flinch. He glanced down at the warrant in his hand, as if to confirm a minor detail. "Ma'am," he began, his voice still infuriatingly calm, "this property, along with the 3 vehicles in the garage, and the entire contents of 7 different bank accounts, have been identified as the direct proceeds of a significant money laundering operation linked to an international crime syndicate." He looked up, his eyes meeting hers, and delivered the final devastating sentence. "They were never yours. They are evidence." My mother, finally finding her voice, began to sputter. "There must be some mistake. This is slander. Who is responsible for this? Who would make such a vicious, terrible lie?" She was searching for a familiar villain, a jealous rival, anyone but the person whose name was slowly dawning on her daughter's face. Chloe had become completely pale, her rage evaporating into a look of sickening, dawning horror. The pieces were clicking into place with audible snaps. The jokes about my spreadsheets, my boring government job, my quiet, chilling warning about the watch being tracked. It all coalesced into a single, unbearable truth. She whispered one word, the sound barely carrying over the gentle lapping of the pool water. "Anna." Special Agent Carr gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod, a gesture of pure, dispassionate confirmation. "The lead investigator on this case," he stated, his voice carrying the full weight of the United States government, Investigator Hayes, "has been building this file for 18 months. He paused for a beat, letting the name they never used, my real name in my real life, settle in the air between them. "Her work has been exceptionally thorough." My mother had always praised Chloe for knowing how to get what she wanted. In the end, it was my boring desk job that determined what she was allowed to keep. The takedown news broke like a tidal wave. I watched the Attorney General's press conference from a monitor in my office, his words carefully chosen and sanitized for public consumption. He spoke of disrupting a major transnational criminal organization and safeguarding the integrity of our financial systems. He never mentioned the parties, champagne, or casual cruelty that had been the catalyst. To the world, it was a successful federal operation. To me, it was justice, served cold and on a platter of legal process. As the press conference ended, the office remained quiet, but the atmosphere had changed. My colleagues, people who understood the silent, grinding work that went into a moment like this, walked past my desk and gave me quiet, knowing nods. That quiet respect was more valuable than any loud proclamation of pride I had ever craved from my family. A few moments later, Director Evans appeared at my door, a rare, small smile on his face. He placed a hand on my shoulder, his grip firm and reassuring. "The Attorney General sends his personal commendations, Hayes," he said, his voice low. "You didn't just close a case, you shut down their entire Western Hemisphere operation." I thought of the heavy, unappreciated metal my mother had set aside to admire a diamond bracelet. This quiet word of praise from a man I respected, acknowledging the true scale of my work. This was the validation I had stopped realizing I needed. 6 months later, my office view had changed. The name on the door was different now, too. Head of Task Force. asset risk and recovery. I had been promoted to head the very unit responsible for the kind of work I'd done on Project Nightingale. It wasn't about the title or the larger office. It was about the responsibility. It was the quiet, profound acknowledgement that my skills were not just useful, but essential. My legacy wasn't going to be one of inheritance or flashiness. It would be one built on competence, brick by methodical brick. My new team was my real family, a unit forged in mutual respect. I saw it one afternoon when a young analyst on my team, a brilliant but nervous woman named Sarah, came to me, her face pale with worry over a mistake she'd made in a complex data set. I could see the familiar fear of reprimand in her eyes. I remembered that fear well. Instead of criticism, I pulled up a chair beside her. "Mistakes are data points," I told her gently. "They tell us where to look next. Let's walk through it together." In that moment, I wasn't just leading a team. I was actively building the kind of supportive, merit-based world I'd never had myself. One evening, while working late, another world tried to pull me back in. My personal phone, so often silent, buzzed on the corner of my desk. It was a text message from a number I still had saved under Mother. I picked it up, my face illuminated by its cold blue light. The message was a jumble of panic and desperation. "Anna, I'm so sorry. Chloe is out on bail. She has nothing. We have nothing. Please, what do we do?" The use of the word "we" was a hook, a desperate attempt to drag me back into their drama, to make their problems my own once more. I read the message once, then a second time. There was no surge of anger, no satisfying jolt of triumph. There was only distance, quiet, calm, absolute detachment. I thought of the girl who had been dragged across a marble floor by her hair, her spirit burning with shame and fury. Then I looked around my office, at the complex charts on my screen, at the city lights twinkling outside my window. That girl was gone. The investigator had taken her place. I didn't reply. I simply placed the phone face down on the desk, the screen going dark, and turned back to my work. My peace was finally my own, and it was no longer for sale. My sister screamed that I was ruining her life by getting out of her house. I learned that true power isn't owning things, it's understanding the systems that can take them all away.